What kind of meditation did the Buddha practice to attain enlightenment? Right concentration. Right concentration is the crucial final step on the Buddha's path to happiness, the Eightfold Path. When the mind is tranquil and stable, obstacles that hinder happiness cannot arise. Moreover, during meditation, we can maintain a steady focus on the mental objects arising along with awareness. Concentration helps us break through the deceptive appearances of these objects, allowing us to clearly see their impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature. With right concentration, we can intensify our meditation practice, making significant progress on the path. Commonly, when we say someone is focused, we might refer to anything from being engrossed in a TV show, to concentrating on a chess game, to planning a crime. However, the kind of concentration that the Buddha taught as part of the Eightfold Path has three special characteristics. It is wholesome, one-pointed, and uses mindfulness to develop wisdom. This type of concentration is not easy to achieve. Like other skills, it requires step-by-step training. The mind must be trained. It may take several meditation sessions or even years of diligent effort to develop this type of wholesome, one-pointed, and mindful concentration. Once this concentration is achieved, the meditator must continue to practice until they can attain it easily, at will. From the beginning, we have emphasized the importance of finding a good teacher to guide us in our practice. A teacher can provide substantial help as we strive to develop concentration. Many questions may arise as we work to perfect our abilities. If a good teacher is not available, the next best resource is books dedicated to this subject. Furthermore, it is very difficult for the mind to become calm enough to achieve concentration if we are constantly dealing with the issues of everyday life. We recommend setting aside some time specifically for meditation practice, such as a full week free from other obligations. Attending an intensive meditation retreat might be the best way to start. Meditation. Not all concentration is wholesome. For example, a cat waiting to catch prey focuses all its attention on the prey. The cat's focus is very intense, but it is not wholesome at all. Wholesome concentration is free from greed, hatred, and delusion. In our daily lives, we can use intense focus to solve a math problem, repair a car, or prepare a complicated dish. This kind of focus can be wholesome if it is stimulated by wholesome thoughts like compassion, love, or kindness. It will be unwholesome if it arises from unwholesome states like greed, hatred, or malice. Unwholesome states, including the 5 hindrances, are often present in our everyday focus more than we might realize. For example, when you try to solve a puzzle, you might be driven by attachment to getting a high score on a test. When repairing a car, you might feel averse to the dirty work. While cooking that elaborate meal, you might be thinking angrily about a family member who will enjoy it. The type of meditation taught by the Buddha does not include these hindrances. Similarly, if we attain concentration while any hindrance is present, it is also unwholesome. For example, you might achieve some level of concentration while experiencing the hindrance of sloth and torpor. You might be in a semi-drowsy state, dreaming of pleasant things. Later, you might delude yourself into thinking you have gained some insight during meditation. That is delusion, not wholesome concentration. Meditating when the mind is angry is also unwholesome. You can tell your meditation is incorrect in such cases because you will feel tense, anxious, and exhausted. Some meditators even get headaches because they force the mind to focus on the meditation object while feeling anger or frustration. In such cases, you need to practice right effort to overcome these hindrances and create a wholesome state of mind before starting. The worst mistake a meditator can make is to spend meditation time ruminating on a loss or other unwholesome thoughts. Of course, bringing mindful awareness to these states is insight meditation. Thus, the first step in establishing right concentration is ensuring that our practice is wholesome by preventing hindrances from attacking the mind. Here are additional steps to achieve concentration during meditation. During meditation, let go of all thoughts attached to circumstances, thoughts, people, and habits. Do not think about family, friends, relatives, career, salary, taxes, possessions, or responsibilities. Tell yourself, I want to dedicate this special time to perfecting myself. I do not want to sit on this meditation cushion to think about all the usual things. I will use this time well. Do not worry about unfinished tasks, mistakes you have made, or potential mistakes with others. Remember that the past is gone and what is done cannot be undone. Spend a few moments cultivating thoughts of loving kindness to make the mind feel pleasant and refreshed for meditation. Then take 3 deep breaths. Focus the mind on the meditation object you have chosen, such as the breath. Keep the mind in the present moment. Persistently strive to keep the mind from wandering. If one of the 5 hindrances arises, overcome it by using the methods we have learned. Cultivate a wholesome state of mind that opposes the hindrance. For example, if greed arises, cultivate equanimity. Allow the mind to become light and clear. Once the hindrance is overcome, redirect the mind back to the chosen meditation object, such as the breath. Remember, the purpose of this session is to practice the meditation method. At this time, you should not delve into the details of what you have experienced, but maintain mindful focus on the meditation object. After each instance of achieving wholesome concentration, you will find it easier and more enthusiastic. No matter how brief or fragile the wholesome concentration is, the key is that you have achieved something by overcoming old habits and transforming the mind. While practicing meditation to train the mind, be content with any level of wholesome concentration you can achieve. When meditating, the tranquility of the mind recharges your energy, making you feel balanced and beginning to believe in the practice. Joy arises because concentration overcomes hindrances. Even in daily life, we need some level of wholesome concentration to live ethically. Wholesome concentration helps us adhere to wholesome thoughts, words, and deeds, and avoid unwholesome ones. Wholesome concentration helps us deal with daily issues fairly and with equanimity. Conversely, our success in developing concentration depends on a solid ethical foundation. As our sense of ethics improves, so does our concentration. The type of meditation we have been discussing so far can be called ordinary wholesome concentration. This type of concentration is relatively easy to achieve. However, the insight arising from ordinary wholesome concentration can also transform life. It helps you avoid unwholesome thoughts, words, and deeds. You do not want to do anything that might hinder the liberation of the mind. This is why the Buddha said that wholesome concentration encompasses all wholesome mental states. When the Buddha was still Prince Siddhartha Gautama, his father, the king, prevented him from seeing anything that might lead him to the spiritual path. Eventually, when the prince saw 4 sights, a sick person, an old person, a dead person, and a monk, it marked a turning point for him. Contemplating these 4 sights, Prince Siddhartha attained a state of concentration. Insight arose concerning the truth of suffering. Therefore, he decided not to return to a life of sensual pleasures in the palace, but to seek a solution to liberate beings from suffering. The same can be true for us. When we observe things with wholesome concentration, ordinary events in daily life can prompt deeper contemplation. Insight arising from this calm mind can convince us that we have been entangled in suffering for long enough, and that it is time to start a new chapter in our lives. We gain a new perspective and insight into the suffering in life. We see the futility of chasing happiness through sensual pleasures. We recognize that material satisfaction comes at the cost of suffering and anxiety. We no longer try to rationalize our misery as happiness. The path out of suffering also becomes clear. Because concentration helps us realize the truth in the Buddhist teachings, we feel more motivated to develop deeper states of concentration, so we can attain deeper insight. Stages of meditation. Deep concentration can lead to profound realizations known as jhana, or meditation absorption. Jhana is always wholesome and focused. However, it is essential to remember that this concentration is not yet right concentration if mindfulness is absent. With complete concentration, our progress toward enlightenment is accelerated. Here we discuss concentration in a very specific sense. Whenever the mind focuses on any object, regardless of its significance, concentration arises. However, we often only see the overall picture without paying attention to the individual details that make up that scene. For example, when reading a book, our eyes focus on one word, then the next, or one sentence, then the next, and this information is processed by the brain. We do not read each letter individually. The mind is so quick and the ability to focus so intense that we perceive entire sentences or lines at once. If we slow down this process, we can become aware of each moment of concentration. The purpose of meditation practice is to maintain awareness so that concentration can flow into each successive moment continuously and without interruption. However, this level of mindfulness is very challenging. Each moment of the mind is so brief that it is almost unimaginable. Someone once asked the Buddha for an example of a moment of the mind. He replied that he could not provide an example because it is impossible to describe the fleeting nature of each moment. However, suppose there is a very fine, delicate spider web and you want to bring a candle to burn it. How long would it take to burn the web? Almost as soon as the candle is brought close, the web burns away. The Buddha taught that in such a brief moment, thousands of moments of the mind can arise, develop, and pass away. With this analogy, the Buddha aimed to convey that the mind's quickness is almost inconceivable. Each fleeting moment of the mind includes 3 even briefer moments: the moment of arising, the moment of maturing, and the moment of passing away. Immediately after the moment of passing away, another moment of the mind arises, following the same process. These 3 brief moments form a complete moment of the mind. Concentration arises with only a few moments of the mind, perhaps 1 in a billion moments. Complete concentration can penetrate to the level where each moment of the mind arises, matures, and passes away. Once we directly observe the arising and passing away of each moment of the mind, we no longer doubt the truth of impermanence, and we naturally let go. This is why we need complete concentration to see reality clearly and attain enlightenment. Complete concentration involves several stages or levels. There are in fact 8 stages of meditation, jhana, that an unenlightened person can achieve, and any of these stages can be used to reach enlightenment. However, to simplify, we will only discuss the first 4 stages. At the very least, one must attain the first stage of jhana to develop the mental strength necessary to perceive things as they truly are. Achieving each of the subsequent 3 stages of concentration makes it easier to recognize the truth. In the second stage, concentration improves due to the absence of the thought process. In the third stage, the level of mindfulness becomes more intense, and in the fourth stage, even more so, with the mind becoming completely purified by equanimity. The first stage of meditation. To attain the first jhana, the mind must be free from hindrances and establish right concentration. Then 5 mental factors, jhana factors, must be present. Initial application vitakka, sustained application vikara, rapture, piti, happiness, sukha, and one-pointedness, ekaggata. Any of these 5 jhana factors can arise alone or together, depending on different conditions. For example, happiness arises in the absence of ill will. When drowsiness is gone, initial application can arise. When restlessness is absent, we have rapture. Whenever we have a moment of right concentration, rapture will arise due to the absence of the 5 hindrances, and a few other jhana factors may also appear. It is a wonderful feeling to have one of these 5 jhana factors present. You may think you are in bliss, but this wonderful feeling is not jhana, even if these factors arise together, one by one. There must be a systematic method to attain the first jhana. This method begins with normal right concentration. The joy you find in this state will lead to happiness. Rapture and happiness are 2 different feelings. Rapture arises from the hopeful anticipation of happiness. Happiness arises from the contentment that your hope has been fulfilled. Here is an analogy to help distinguish between rapture and happiness. Imagine you are walking in a desert. There is no water or shade, only sand. You walk on, tired and thirsty. Suddenly you see someone coming towards you with wet hair. Overjoyed, you ask, "Where did you find water?" There is an oasis just ahead. As you move towards the oasis, you first feel joyful, rapture, when you see water from a distance. As you get closer, your joy, rapture, increases. Then you jump into the water, drink it, and dance along the shore, feeling cool and refreshed. Oh, what bliss! This is happiness. People often confuse happiness with excitement. For example, when someone wins the lottery, they express their excitement by shouting, jumping up and down, hugging, crying, and laughing. They think, "I feel so happy." But that feeling is not true happiness. It is excitement. When true happiness arises, excitement vanishes and you feel relaxed and peaceful. True happiness leads to calmness. When the mind settles, it naturally becomes more stable. When your concentration deepens, you can proceed to train the mind to achieve absorption, jhana, with the following steps. Keep the mind focused on the breath or any chosen meditation object. At this point, do not observe other arising objects like sounds or thoughts. Let go of anything that arises and return to the breath. Repeat this until the mind loses interest in anything else and stays with the meditation object. Gradually, the breath or other chosen object may seem to fade and be replaced by a mental image or feeling, called the sign of concentration, nimitta. This becomes your new meditation object, and you stay with it. When the mental image also fades and the mind dwells on itself, you have reached the first absorption, first jhana. How does this happen? As right concentration deepens, the mind gradually loses interest in anything else and stays focused on the meditation object, like the breath. When you continue focusing on this object, it becomes so subtle that you no longer notice it. But at the point of focus, like the tip of the nose, the memory of the breath or the meditation object persists. This memory becomes a very pleasant feeling called the sign of concentration. This sign can appear as an image, light, or gentle touch, depending on the individual. Whatever form the sign takes, stay with it. Use the same sign every time you meditate. Do not share it with others, as each person's sign is different and could confuse others. Initially, the in-breath and out-breath are your meditation objects. Now you use the sign as your meditation object. The Buddha encouraged his disciples to practice, develop, and perfect the sign. Practice attaining the sign repeatedly until you can control it entirely, so that whenever you want to experience it, the sign will appear and you can merge your mind with it. When the sign first appears during meditation, it seems stable. Thus, concentration can arise based on it. But when focusing entirely on the sign, you begin to see that the sign changes moment by moment. Gradually, like all other conditioned phenomena, the sign will pass away. When the sign also disappears, the mind has no other object but itself to focus on, so the mind concentrates on itself. At that moment, initial application, vitakka, briefly appears. This is the beginning of wholesome one-pointedness. When initial application is sustained for a few seconds, sustained application, vikara, can arise. Now the mind is firmly fixed on the object. Since the mind no longer wanders, a more subtle rapture arises, followed by an even more subtle happiness. These 4 jhana factors initiate absorption. Now the 5 factors of the first jhana, initial application, sustained application, rapture, happiness, and one-pointedness, work together as one. People often ask me, how do I know if I have attained the first jhana? The answer is straightforward. As we mentioned earlier, only when all 5 jhana factors work harmoniously can we say we have attained the first jhana. Imagine you are looking for a rainbow. Before finding a rainbow, you might see red here, blue there, or a mix of colors. They might be beautiful hues, but they are not a rainbow. Only when the sunlight hits the clouds at the right angle, creating an arc with all the colors arranged as they should be, do you have a rainbow. Similarly, only when the conditions are right and all 5 jhana factors appear, can you say you have attained jhana. Some people think that a concentrated mind must be empty. They imagine the mind of a meditator must be devoid of feeling, like a stone. Nothing could be further from the truth. The mind in jhana is not inactive but vibrant. In the first jhana, the mind possesses the following intense characteristics: equanimity, a balanced feeling that is neither unpleasant nor pleasant; purity, with no concern for anything worldly like politics or romance; one-pointedness, mental states of contact, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness; energy, determination, effort, and mindfulness. A concentrated mind dwelling in itself generates powerful inner strength. Like a whirlpool, it creates an ever stronger column of water by turning on itself. This powerful inner strength is called concentration power. Consider, for example, the power of hydroelectricity. When a large amount of water flows through a small outlet, the concentrated force is so intense that it can move turbines to generate enough energy to light up a city. Because the water is not diffused to external objects, its energy accumulates within. Similarly, when the mind is not influenced by an external or internal object, its energy gathers within itself. Then the mind is like water forced through a small outlet. The concentration power of the mind is so great that it can directly observe the impermanence at the most fundamental, detailed, and subtle level of body and mind. The mind in jhana is such a wholesome state of one-pointedness. This intense concentration is not like when the mind is stuck to the meditation object. That would be attachment, which makes the mind agitated. This concentration is not the mind merging with the object, it is the mind merging with itself. The object is used as a lever to enter the mind. If the mind clings to an object, it is not wholesome, it is concentration with attachment. Unfortunately, that is the type of meditation some meditators practice, but it cannot lead to liberation. The first time you attain the first jhana, you will be so filled with rapture and happiness that these positive states will seem inseparable from the body. Like salt completely dissolved in water so that you cannot distinguish salt from water, when your entire body is filled with rapture and happiness, you cannot separate these feelings from the sensation in the body. The feeling of tranquility is so wonderful that you would want to remain in this state of concentration forever. The second jhana. After attaining the first jhana, I advise against trying to reach the second jhana immediately. This is a rather unwise action, akin to a futile spiritual ambition. Before moving on to the second jhana, you must perfect the first jhana. If you are too eager, you may not only fail to reach the second jhana, but also lose the ability to re-enter the first jhana. The Buddha compared an overly eager meditator to a cow that, unfamiliar with its current pasture, moves to another field. Consequently, this naive cow gets lost in the mountains, without food, water, and unable to find its way home. This is not the time to seek new excitements. It is the time to patiently train the mind. Therefore, when you attain the first jhana, you need to recall what you did to get there. This is where your mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness helps you remember the steps you practiced. If that state of concentration happened unexpectedly, and you do not recall how you practiced, it is not true attainment. A teacher may believe you have attained one of the jhanas, but you should verify this for yourself. Do not easily accept opinions that others may freely declare. After reviewing your practice steps, you decide mindfully to attain the first jhana again, to maintain this state of concentration longer, and to determine when this state will end. After making these three decisions, practice the necessary steps to attain the first jhana multiple times. When repeating this process many times, you will no longer be concerned with initial and sustained application. This change may occur over one or several meditation sessions. For example, you have attained the first jhana 50 times, and each time you notice less concern for initial and sustained application. Then, in the 51st session, you completely disregard these two factors, paying no attention to them because you have lost interest in them. The moment this happens, the two factors disappear, meaning you have attained the second jhana. In the second jhana, there are no thoughts that disturb the mind and hinder one-pointedness. The remaining factors are stronger one-pointedness, rapture, and happiness. Rapture and happiness in the second jhana are less exuberant and more refined because they are no longer based on the mind's relief from overcoming hindrances. Now, rapture and happiness are based on concentration. A fresh sense of confidence also arises from the achievements made up to this moment. Confidence in your ability to progress, confidence in the method, and confidence in the Buddhist teachings. Concentration also gains strength. Imagine a cool lake fed by an underground spring. The pure spring water mixes with the cool lake water, keeping the lake clean and undisturbed. Similarly, in the second jhana, the sublime rapture and happiness brought by concentration continue to flow within the mind. The mind is nourished, and the body is entirely filled with rapture and happiness. The third jhana, using the same process as before, the meditator re-establishes the second jhana multiple times. The first time the second jhana is attained, the joy experienced is wonderful and fresh. However, repetition causes the joy to become monotonous. Gradually, you begin to lose interest in it. As a result, the factor of joy fades away. The moment joy leaves your mind, you attain the third jhana. Equanimity and concentration become stronger. This makes your mindfulness more stable and powerful. Your mind becomes filled with happiness at a deeper and more subtle level. For example, think of a lake full of blooming water lilies. These flowers are born in the water, live under the water, and are nourished by the depth of the water. They are completely saturated with water, both inside and out, every cell filled with water. Similarly, in the third jhana, your body is entirely saturated and filled with happiness. In the second jhana, there was some activity, some excitement, like the movement of the fresh stream water flowing into the lake. But in the third jhana, you no longer feel the need to be nourished by happiness from outside. The subtle happiness has the characteristic of calmness because happiness has completely filled the body and mind. The fourth jhana, just like before, the meditator repeats the third jhana multiple times until they no longer have any interest in pleasure. When pleasure fades away, mindfulness becomes even more clear due to the presence of equanimity, a state of perfect emotional balance, neither painful nor pleasurable. The meditator will realize that mindfulness and equanimity are purer than pleasure. When pleasure is completely relinquished, the meditator enters the fourth jhana, where mindfulness is purified by the power of equanimity. Recall that in the third jhana, equanimity was present, but because pleasure was not yet relinquished, equanimity was not strong enough to purify mindfulness. In the fourth jhana, the mind is entirely settled, tranquil, and steady. All negative mental states have been subdued, and the mind is no longer disturbed. The mind is clear and bright, enveloping the whole body like a white, clean, soft cloth wrapped around it. This clean, soft cloth is so gentle that you almost cannot feel it, yet it protects you from heat, cold, wind, and insects. Similarly, when the mind is clear and bright, nothing can cause it to become attached or angry. The mind maintains a state of detachment. Even if the body is bitten by insects or subjected to heat or cold, the mind remains unaffected. Even if someone pulls your robe or starts a conversation, the mind does not care about these disturbances and remains steady and undisturbed. At this point, the meditator understands the true power of concentration. The mind has been strengthened, purified, and freed from obstacles, and it is steady. The mind is flexible yet calm, strong, and sharp in its most important task. When the meditator focuses this concentrated mind on an object, they will see it as it truly is. In other words, this perfectly concentrated mind can penetrate the true nature of reality. The 4 levels of jhana are so wonderful that one might want to immerse in them to enjoy the bliss without considering directing the mind toward insight. However, if a meditator only focuses on bliss without developing ways to use concentrated mind, they limit the power of their concentration. Their concentrated mind remains wholesome, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if the meditator does not utilize their concentration well, it is like being given the fastest racehorse in the world, perfectly trained, and only using it for leisurely rides around the neighborhood. The mind attained through jhana is an incredibly valuable tool that should not be wasted. If, while in concentration, the meditator uses mindfulness to observe reality, this concentrated power can help them achieve liberation. Right mindfulness on right concentration. There are 3 best attitudes when practicing meditation. The first is to begin the meditation session with the effort to attain jhana, meditative absorption. Once that is achieved, the practitioner uses concentration to practice insight meditation, vipassana. This involves using concentration to observe the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature, the 3 marks of form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. The second approach is to start the meditation session with insight meditation. When practicing vipassana, whenever an object arises, the practitioner observes it until it passes away, noting its impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature. Then the practitioner relaxes and returns to the primary meditation object, such as the breath. Each time the mind returns to the breath, it settles more deeply. If obstacles arise, the practitioner overcomes them, which also helps the mind settle. As the mind's agitation quiets down, the practitioner will no longer be interested in the objects that previously distracted the mind. These objects gently pass away in the mind's awareness. Gradually, the sign of concentration appears, followed by initial and sustained application of thought, and finally full concentration arises as described above. In that concentrated state, the practitioner continues to practice insight, observing the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selflessness of form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. The third approach is to start with either insight meditation or the effort to attain concentration and switch between the two methods. For example, one begins by focusing on the breath, disregarding other objects to achieve concentration. If unsuccessful and the mind becomes agitated, one then uses insight meditation to observe the changes in the feeling of agitation. When this feeling passes, one examines whether any other obstacles have arisen. Once the mind is stable, one returns to observing the breath more deeply, disregarding other objects if they arise, and makes another effort to attain concentration. Thus, in this third method, attention and mindfulness harmonize to gradually bring about deeper concentration and sharper insight. Eventually, when insight nearly perfects its seeing and concentration is nearly complete, the two will converge. Regardless of the method you use for meditation, mindfulness and concentration, when skillfully applied, will eventually unite and work together. If, when you sit down on the meditation cushion, you find that obstacles can be easily subdued and the mind is not distracted, then starting with concentration meditation is better. Conversely, if the mind is agitated and cannot be settled immediately, you should not attempt to develop concentration, but should start with insight meditation. Or, you can switch between the two methods. Begin with the one that aligns with your current state of mind. Regardless of the starting method, once mindfulness and concentration have combined, you need to use them to eliminate the first three fetters. Understanding that everything is selfless, you no longer believe in a permanent, unchanging self. You will see the futility of clinging to rites and rituals. You will understand the Four Noble Truths more clearly than ever before, and have no doubt about the Buddha's path to enlightenment. Use your concentrated mind like a laser beam to burn away a solid object. To aim the laser precisely, you need to use your eyes. If you are only looking around, you cannot aim accurately. Ultimately, either the wrong object is burned or nothing is burned at all. And of course, if you don't turn on the laser, even if you sit there all day, nothing will be burned. In this analogy, the eyes represent wisdom. The laser beam is concentration. Wisdom and concentration work together. Without wisdom, the light of concentration will scatter or aim at the wrong object. Without the light of concentration, even if the eye of wisdom sees the object, it cannot burn it. What are we trying to burn? Defilements, unwholesome mind states. We need to see them with the eye of wisdom and destroy them with the concentrated mind. Once you have attained right concentration, what do you focus on? You direct your concentrated, wholesome mind towards the continuous change of the components that make up the body and mind. Form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. You pay attention to the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of these components. When you focus on one of these components, you realize that they are all subject to change. You see the connection between impermanence and suffering due to your attachment to fleeting pleasures. Recognizing the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness is the primary task of insight meditation. When this task is accomplished, you will be freed from clinging to the aggregates that make up the body and mind. With nothing left to cling to, you are liberated. When meditators cultivate sufficient concentration and mindfulness, they can trace back in their minds the images of events, times, thoughts, and actions in the past until they recognize the connection between the continuous flow of the present and past events, thoughts, and actions. This connecting thread is craving and ignorance. They realize the relationship between impermanence, the craving for impermanent things, and suffering. The deep insight of the meditator also recognizes all negativities in all aspects and how and why they arise. Insight understands that all negativities come from clinging, and this clinging can end by ending one's own craving mind. Through this insight, the meditator directly experiences within themselves that everything is impermanent, that clinging to anything impermanent leads to suffering, and that all existing phenomena have no enduring essence. Understanding this way, we see the door to enlightenment. Applying concentration. On the night of enlightenment, the Buddha developed powerful concentration not to stop there but to apply it. In one intense, powerful moment, the three insights into impermanence, suffering, and non-self all burst forth, and the Buddha achieved his goal. Applying jhana is the key. Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta, the two former teachers of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha before enlightenment, had achieved concentration. However, they did not train themselves to direct their attention towards form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness to see their true nature. Instead, they became attached to the bliss of concentration and mistook that bliss for enlightenment. Prince Siddhartha Gautama noted that his previous teachers like him also possessed faith, effort, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Like him, their wisdom helped them understand the dangers of obstacles and the necessity of overcoming them. But unlike Prince Siddhartha Gautama, they did not know that they were merely using concentration to suppress obstacles, not to eradicate them. They did not discover the latent fetters, the forces that bind beings to the endless cycle of birth and death. Only Prince Siddhartha Gautama used his concentration to clearly see how obstacles and fetters bind us. What understanding did the Buddha attain? As we know, the five hindrances, sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry and doubt, prevent meditators from achieving jhana. Therefore, in practicing to develop concentration, meditators strive to set these aside. However, the latent fetters from which the hindrances arise continue to exist in our subconscious. The 10 fetters are belief in a permanent self, personality view, doubt, belief in the efficacy of rituals, clinging to rites and rituals, sensual desire, ill will, desire for rebirth in the form realm, desire for rebirth in the formless realm, conceit, restlessness, and ignorance. These unwholesome mental habits remain dormant while we meditate. Because these latent fetters still lie dormant in our consciousness, when we come out of meditation, the hindrances return. When we want to achieve jhana again, we have to set aside the hindrances once more. Thus, although we train the mind, we can set aside the hindrances more easily. It's like sweeping dust off a dirt floor. Even though we have just swept, dust soon returns. The floor continues to crack, the walls crack, and then we have another pile of dust. To get rid of the dust, we could sweep the whole house, sprinkle water on the floor, or pour a few buckets of water to turn the dirt into mud. However, the dust will return, but if we dig deep down to the rock layer, remove all the sand and dust, and then pour cement over it, the dirt dust will no longer be a problem. Digging up all the dirt is like insight meditation, overcoming both the hindrances and the fetters. Pouring cement symbolizes entering enlightenment, making the mind firm, unshakable by worldly temptations. Once this is done, nothing can disturb our mind. The teachers of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta, also possessed wisdom. They understood the dangers of sensual pleasures and the benefits of concentration, so they temporarily dispelled all hindrances and achieved jhana. However, these attainments were not enough to free them from the fetters binding them to the endless cycle of birth and death. Pure concentration alone cannot destroy the fetters. To destroy them, we must combine concentration, mindfulness, and insight. Otherwise, we will cling to the bliss of concentration, like the teachers of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, and not progress further. The Buddha's insight was unique. With this insight, he not only saw the dangers of sensual pleasures and the benefits of concentration, but he also used this wisdom to go beyond concentration. He used his wisdom to discover that the obstacles he had transformed in concentration were merely signs of a deeper, more powerful problem, the fetters. He saw how the fetters disturbed the mind, created illusions about reality, and led to suffering related to the self. With a pure mindful mind and concentration, he found a way to transform the fetters by seeing the impermanence, suffering, and non-self in all conditioned phenomena. When we see these three characteristics in every aspect of existence, craving, aversion, and ignorance, along with other fetters, will be eradicated forever. Don't deceive yourself. When we attempt to put the Buddha's teachings into practice, we must be careful not to deceive ourselves. Some people claim that when they go deep into concentration, they do not feel anything, hear anything, or have any thoughts. They say they sink so deeply into concentration that they lose track of time. At meditation retreats we organize, I have met such people swaying like fragile trees in the wind. Suddenly falling into an unconscious state is not called concentration. It is called sleeping. Some even snore. As soon as we ring the bell to end the meditation session, these meditators emerge from their deep concentration and say, "I had a wonderful meditation session. Today I reached the 4th jhana." Don't deceive yourself. That is just an illusion. If a meditator genuinely reaches any level of concentration, sleepiness vanishes, and the mind possesses all the positive qualities mentioned earlier. Concentration can only be achieved with intentional focus. You will clearly recognize the steps you went through to achieve meditative attainment. Thus, you can repeat those steps later whenever you wish. Meditation progresses through many stages, and only when that concentration is combined with mindfulness can it help you advance on the path to enlightenment. Moreover, don't deceive yourself into thinking that concentration is the same as enlightenment. Enlightenment is not so easy and quick. The meditator must go through the process of overcoming the hindrances, achieving concentration, and combining that still mind with insight to eradicate the hindrances and fetters. No matter how long you meditate, even if you reach the highest jhana, if you do not eradicate the fetters, you cannot achieve enlightenment, not even the initial stage of enlightenment. Finally, don't deceive yourself into thinking that mindfulness alone is sufficient to lead you to enlightenment. We cannot say, "I don't care about concentration or morality. I only need to practice mindfulness." Mindfulness cannot be separated from the other steps on the path. Those who do not practice the other steps of the Noble Eightfold Path often find that they cannot completely eliminate greed, hatred, and delusion, and thus, they do not succeed in their practice of mindfulness. Patient, those who strive to achieve one-pointed concentration to aid in their practice of insight meditation sometimes worry that they cannot achieve it. Do not be discouraged. Sometimes it takes years to reach concentration. If you meditate guided by mindfulness, you will feel at ease whether you attain concentration or not. Do not force yourself to create concentration. Every time you meditate, you get closer to concentration. How long it takes depends on how regularly you meditate and how well you practice the other branches of the Noble Eightfold Path. Some days you will focus well, and other days your mindfulness will be better. If you have attained concentration in the past, but do not meditate daily and have not truly mastered that concentrated mind, you may struggle to regain concentration when you try again. Worse still, if you let the hindrances, which you thought were dormant, become active again, or if you have engaged in unwholesome deeds, it will be almost impossible. On days when focusing on meditation is challenging, just be mindful of your active mind without worrying or saying you cannot meditate. Mindfully observing what is happening enhances your deep insight into the reality you are experiencing. As long as you continue to practice all the steps on the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, and keep striving without being attached to the effort to achieve concentration, you can trust that right concentration will gradually manifest. By using this versatile tool, you will attain ultimate happiness. Summary of right concentration. The key points to achieving happiness through right concentration are: right concentration has 3 characteristics: wholesome, one-pointed, and it operates with mindfulness. The Buddha taught us a gradual step-by-step method to attain right concentration. Wholesome concentration is the type that liberates us from greed, hatred, and delusion. The 5 hindrances are no longer present. To develop right concentration, first practice wholesome concentration by overcoming the hindrances. Focus on the breath or other chosen meditation objects and ignore newly arising objects. After practicing wholesome concentration for a while, your breath becomes very subtle, almost disappearing. The memory of the breath at the point of focus, like the tip of the nose, transforms into a pleasant sensation called the sign of concentration. One-pointedness refers to the mind focusing on itself after the sign of concentration has disappeared. One-pointedness is a factor of meditative absorption or jhana. The first level of meditative absorption, first jhana, is marked by the simultaneous operation of initial application, sustained application, rapture, pleasure, and concentration. At least the first jhana must be attained to reach enlightenment. Once you know how to achieve the first jhana, resolve to attain it again, decide how long to remain in this state and when to exit it. Practice achieving the first jhana multiple times until you fully master it. The second jhana arises when you have achieved the first jhana so many times that you lose interest in initial and sustained application, causing these factors to disappear. The third jhana arises when the repeated attainment of the second jhana causes the mind to lose interest in rapture. As rapture fades, pleasure becomes more subtle and equanimity becomes clearer. The fourth jhana arises when you lose interest in pleasure and your mindfulness becomes purified by profound equanimity. In the state of concentration, the mind is filled with wholesome, strong, determined qualities, not rigid like a rock, or as if someone is sleeping. Meditative absorption generates the quality and strength needed for insight meditation practice. Regardless of how long you remain in the strongest level of concentration, it alone will not bring enlightenment. To achieve enlightenment, you must destroy the fetters. You can begin a meditation session with either tranquility meditation to cultivate one-pointed concentration or with mindfulness practice, depending on your mind's stability that day. You can also switch between the two methods. No matter how you start a meditation session, concentration and mindfulness must work together to form complete wisdom. You need sharp discernment to recognize the impermanence, suffering, and non-self nature of all phenomena. Insight allows us to see the role of craving in causing suffering so that we can let go of it. Only concentration or only mindfulness cannot lead to enlightenment. Enlightenment occurs when concentration combines with mindfulness to destroy the fetters through insight. It may take just a few days or many years to achieve meditative absorption. Do not be discouraged if it takes time, and do not try to force it.